It's the Heckleproof Comedy Podcast with Zach Bolton and Carl Lee and Matty J. In this episode, sex educator and media activist Carina Kolodny.
What's up? Welcome to episode number 4 podcast with the Heckleproof crew. What's up, guys? How you doing? Let's give a shout out to some of our sponsors. What's up to Hawaiian Hut? Say what's up to Chadwick's Pub.
And Medford Riding Custom, as always.
And of course, World Comedy Underground.
There it is.
Like I said, this is our 4th episode. And
we got a show today.
Yeah, we got something, man. I like how we bring a variety of things to our people. It's either us talking shit or we bring on some people that's interested.
Well, we're always talking shit.
Because all we do is talk shit.
That's all we do.
We talk shit that nobody needs to really take in. That's why I like we call it Heckleproof, because it's like you can't fucking get mad at us.
A lot of banter.
Yeah,
you probably could.
You probably could.
It wouldn't affect us. We're Heckleproof.
You know, because like being comics, you know, you sometimes you hear that, you can't tell if it's because I offended you.
I don't know if I've heard that before. those noises.
Well, in today's episode, you're going to learn some tools that you can use to finally hear noises like that.
Yeah.
Because we have a special guest.
Yes, Carl, why don't you introduce them?
Yes, who we have here? We have one of my favorite people, ladies and gentlemen. Give her up for Carina Kolodny. Show her some love. Give her some love.
Yeah. What's up, Carina?
Right.
Hello.
So, Carina, tell us your title. Tell us what you like to, tell us about you. That's basic.
Okay. I am Carina Kolodny, as Carl said. I'm a sex educator and a media activist with a specialization in pleasure education and youth sexuality.
A sex educator.
Pleasurecation.
Nice. I'm a sex activist. I took that one from Levi.
Who is Levi? Our production manager.
He also is a sex activist.
Yeah.
How would you define that? I mean, I get that it's a joke, but now that you're on the spot.
Yeah,
like,
now that I'm on the spot.
I know exactly how to define it. Every woman that's ever had sex with him has definitely held up some picket signs. in groups.
Or a sex activist.
Okay, here we are. Welcome to Heckleproof.
He turned them into sex deactivists. Their pussies were deactivated when he pulled out.
Yeah, millennials canceled you all of a sudden.
Pussy lips just...
Sealed up.
Holding their breath, I can do it for 5 minutes. All right. Anyway, back to the podcast.
Yeah, let's hear a little more about you.
So I've been working in media for quite a while.
Okay.
I worked at HuffPost as the director of multimedia platforms.
That's
and
dope.
I had a podcast there called the HuffPost Love+Sex podcast. This episode may explain, let me try it again. It's been a while. This episode may contain explicit material. Please proceed with caution. You get started.
We're gonna rip that soundbite now.
Yeah. Can I record that? Can we do that one time and I'll record it on here?
Yeah, do that shit.
Let's do that. Let me set it up. I'm keeping that forever. Go ahead. Count in.
This episode may contain explicit content. Please proceed with caution.
Damn. See, you can tell that skill.
Listen, I'm going to play it back for you. Listen how good this sounds.
Okay. This episode may contain explicit content. Please proceed with caution. Yeah.
And then Carl fucks up.
You want to try it again?
Yeah, one more again. Hold on. Let me, ready? Go ahead, counter in.
This episode contains explicit content. Please proceed with caution.
Yeah. Ready?
This episode contains explicit content. Please proceed with caution.
Yep, you're officially part of the show.
Now
every time we do something, that is what's
I'm pretty
played.
sure, like whatever she said, we're gonna keep some shit that you say.
We'll be using that shit.
That's one thing I love about you. You just funny and you don't give a shit. Mm-hmm. You gotta have two of those things.
Yeah,
funny and don't give a shit. That is what Heckleproof is about.
Yeah.
So how does
and sex?
How does
yeah?
How I gotta fuck everything up?
Now we are.
How does the two things interplay between one another that you introduced?
So sex education and media activism, that's a good question. So we'll go a little dark, but I promise we'll reel back from there real quick. So my career started in activism around female genital mutilation, which is obviously when people are having their clits removed in cultural ceremonies around the world.
Yes.
And I was trying to figure out as a media activist why I couldn't get people engaged around this topic the way that they would engage around other topics. So for example, up until a year ago, it was illegal for a woman to drive in Saudi Arabia. And feminist activists were outraged about that, as they should be. But no one really gave a shit that about 90% of girls in East Africa have their clits brutally cut off.
Jeez.
Yeah. So I was trying to understand why that was. And as I peeled back the layers, I realized it was because most people in the United States and the West don't understand female sexuality. They don't understand the female anatomy, the notion of the clit being cut off. They don't really even understand what the clit is.
I'll be honest,
for.
I didn't even know that was a thing. Not the clit. I know the clit's a thing, but I didn't know the cutting off of the clit was a thing.
I don't know.
I like that you had to specify that.
Yeah. Is that where beans come from?
Wow.
I'm sorry. That's so bad. Hey, what the fuck?
Anyway.
Yeah, Zach's not allowed to talk during this episode. We're trying to do education, not 2 steps
Leave
forward.
him alone. That's my baby boy. Leave him alone.
But
I take
seriously,
responsibility.
think about it. If people were like little boys at age 11 were getting their dicks chopped off in some other part of the world, like SEAL Team 6 would show up. You know, it would be like they're like,
what is the
those
reasoning
choppers?
behind the chopping off? What?
So a lot of it again has to do with feeling like women are not supposed to experience pleasure. And that it's sinful or shameful, and that a woman might go outside of her marriage, a woman might do these other things if she has the sex drive, and they believe taking it away, taking away this pleasure center, they are making her chaste and making her, safe for her husband.
That's crazy.
So just basically bear children.
Yeah, bear children.
I actually can recall that when I was in college, because what a lot of African men do is they bring their families, their wives. They have several wives, as you know. What do they call it? Concubine?
Where?
In the African men's wives.
I mean, there's certainly in like Maasai culture where there's a lot of female genital mutilation. There's a lot of wife sharing.
Yeah. So they brought them to use that. So I was dating a girl from Africa, and she had a beautiful African name, May Queen.
May Queen?
Her name was May Queen.
May Queen.
May Queen.
So when we started having sex, I was hitting it hard. I was putting in that work. A zumba, a zumba.
You got the drum out? You had a drum?
A zumba.
Wait, was that like a blow dart? What the fuck was that?
Put it to sleep.
Is this Ace Ventura? This is what I'm thinking. Tommy Davidson.
I was putting in that work, right? But I swear, I finally asked her, I was like, did you come? And
she you should never ever have to ask. Sorry, Carl.
I know.
Too much reality.
Did she ask what that meant or what?
No, she told me she couldn't.
Oh.
And she told me she couldn't. She explained to it. She explained me that story, but what she'd had removed. And I was like, and I was young, like hella young. Jeez. And she was too. So she was probably a little younger than me, a couple years younger than me. So imagine.
Yeah.
Because of what age usually?
Around 11 or 13, depending on the culture. Yeah.
What?
Mm-hmm. So that was very interesting. So she shared
being 13 and getting my dangling cut off.
Right.
Oh my god.
Just the top, the pleasurable part.
Just the top.
You get to keep the rest.
That's like the Florida story.
You could do that in reverse. Yeah, I mean, in an alternate universe, you could easily do that in reverse as well. It's like men could still technically have children without having the pleasure portions.
Right.
Yeah.
You know? So think about it that way.
It saddens me to even know like the female experience that, But then how about when she was just telling us about the in some parts of the country, the boys get their penis cut off. Imagine, like, I know as a female you get that happen. I can't imagine what that was like as a young boy to have that done and what kind of trauma that is, because you look down. You know what I mean? Like I wouldn't even know how to function like that. You know what I mean? Like you have some people that have accidents like the Florida guy, Lorena Bobbitt type of shit. But
I mean, those weren't accidents.
And they went back and sewed it back on or whatever they did.
Yeah.
But just imagine a young boy like that happened to him. Like, what is the rest of his life like? We know it's not no sexual relationship happen, but what is it like for him psychologically and mentally and emotionally?
That's gotta fuck you up.
And I imagine it's like a case by case thing. I imagine some women with perhaps like some psychology help or some therapy help, and then potentially what you do might be able to find ways of like re-engaging some pleasure.
So actually what's really interesting is there's this whole movement that's led by my friend Sophia Wallace, and it's called Cliteracy, which is
That's dope.
Literacy.
Like
Yep.
that.
Sophia Wallace, my girl. So Cliteracy is
Shout
really...
out to you.
Yeah, shout out to her.
Shout out, Sophia.
What is really incredible is the full anatomical clitoris was not discovered until 1997.
What? I was around?
We put
I
a man
like that
on
you
the moon.
said discovered too.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So there is a urologist in Australia named Dr. Helen O'Connell, and she was wondering, because as a urologist, a lot of men were getting these different procedures, and there are all of these things that happen when men get procedures anywhere around their penis or anywhere around where there are nerve endings. And when women were getting procedures, there was no such thing to protect nerves. And so she was like, we could be cutting into the clitoris. We don't know. So she did the first dissection, the first 3D understanding of the clitoris. It is not anything like what we think it is. It is in fact analogous in shape and size to the penis. It is made entirely of erectile tissue, so it gets hard, just like a penis gets hard.
Yeah.
But anyway, because of knowing that, there is a man named Dr. Pierre Folds who, because that knowledge became aware, he said, oh, well, if there's so much of an internal clitoris structure, then we could actually take some of the internal clitoris and bring it out to do a surgical reconstruction for women who have undergone female genital mutilation.
Oh, wow.
But the really, really weird thing, though, is that it's, obviously the female genital mutilation is a really extreme example of it. But most women, and certainly most men, just have no understanding of the clitoris as a sexual organ.
You're right.
And it's pretty horrific. I mean, could you guys draw a clitoris right now?
No.
No, I don't think so.
No.
What do you think it would
Levi off camera raised his hand. He's
Really?
like,
Levi.
Well, now you told me I would just drop
Levi's about to take the clitoris challenge.
What?
True that.
Hey, man.
Okay, I have my little box of tools here. So
Yeah,
here
break
we
it
go.
out,
Ooh,
break it out,
sex
break it
educator
out, break
bringing
it
her
out.
bringing her material to classroom.
Ooh, she opened up
What's
the
in the
box
box,
of
man?
magic.
Man, what's in the box?
A magic box.
So this is a clitoris.
That's what I was going to draw.
The full internal and external.
I was going to draw
Yep.
that.
Right.
So this right here, the little head, if you think of it as a little creature,
Yeah.
this is the external part of the clitoris. And everything else exists internally.
Yep.
So if you're having a vaginal orgasm, if you're having an anal orgasm, it's all because this internal part of the clitoris is aligned with those areas of your body. So some women can have anal orgasms really easily, and it just has to do with how their internal clitoris sits. Some women can have vaginal orgasms easily, has to do with how their internal clitoris sits. 80% of women cannot orgasm from penetration alone. I love telling men that because they do like the math in their head of how many women have faked it with them. And that just like brings me so much personal joy to like burst that bubble.
Yeah.
No doubt.
It looks like a pterodactyl.
It does. It look like a cool little
Boeing. It's a 747.
It looks like a pterodactyl
nut
with
sacks.
elephantitis.
Yeah, elephantitis pterodactyl.
I think
some nuts.
But that,
Hey, girl, give me
a-
that pterodactyl.
That's important to remember because
looked like-
if you realize that that's underneath, then that's additional area you need to be paying attention to
Right.
if
Yeah.
you're a person who cares.
yes.
From the OG himself, from the OJ Matty J himself.
I don't claim to be a therapist,
Matty J.
but I can help.
But this is pretty cool because
That's cool.
what she's doing is truly educating us.
Yeah.
Because I'm gonna tell you, man, a lot of guys would be so intimidated to have these discussions.
Right. Well, look
You know
at
what I mean? Oh,
Carl's embracing.
I love this stuff.
oh, that shit is a back scratcher
see?
too. It's
Yeah,
a back
it does. It's got
Hey, that's the
all
first time
this
Carl's
stuff.
ever been rubbed by a clit. He usually rubs them.
Well, see, the thing is,
Cut his
Free,
mic off.
pass it
Levi,
around.
cut his
Yeah,
mic
pass it
off.
around. Let me
Take
see
a
that.
look.
Cut his mic off.
Let me see that pterodactyl.
I think the best description
Look
I've
at it,
ever
like
heard is
some
like
white
weird ass Angry Birds character.
Right.
What somebody said it looked like.
It's an
Yeah.
evil Angry Birds
with like
character.
a spy versus spy face.
Hey, but real quick, who's chewing on it?
My dog.
I told you
by
it's a
the
donkey toy. I just said it like a damn donkey toy.
no, the real question is who's not chewing on it?
Yeah.
Who's not?
You know?
Because if you're not chewing on it now that you know,
Yeah.
that's the
not
thing.
snacking.
That's the thing about awareness is
Touch the
people
clit.
don't realize like,
Oh, God.
oh god. So the thing that people realize or
That's
don't
cool.
realize is like once you know something, if you don't follow through, you're pretending like you don't. You're pretending ignorance because of laziness. So again, men, if you're out there and you're watching, or if you're, that's why we try to visually describe this. Some people are just listening. So, but if you're out there, there's a lot more than what you think. I hope you're tuning into the YouTube to get the lesson. And now that you know it, if you're not working it, I mean, I'm sorry, you're a dick.
No pun intended.
Yeah.
Yeah. Willful ignorance.
And men were just
No
fucking
pun
bland
intended.
as shit. Like everybody knows everything about us.
Well, I mean, it's just like it makes sense, even if you're not this like very forward-thinking, thoughtful person.
Yeah.
But you just want to have sex a lot. Like,
Right.
if you want to have sex a lot, be a good lover.
Be a good sexer.
partner.
Or a fucker.
Be a good sexer.
Or a good fucker.
A
Because
good
if you're going to
fucker.
fuck, make sure you, because that's what, because some people, because this is, so let me ask you this. So you sex education,
Sure.
right? So a lot of times we hear someone say, oh, he's a sex addict or she's a sex addict. Sometimes I wonder, is it the sex or is it the validation or what is it? Because I don't know if anybody really feels like fucking as much as they want to do heroin. You know what I'm saying? Like sex addict, drug addict. Like, what is it? Is it more to it, you think? Not just the sex?
I mean, I think it's a range. I think there are certainly people who are addicted to sex, and it might come down to validation. It might come down to distraction. It might come down to any number of elements. But there are certainly people with sex addictions. I agree with you. I think what's really problematic right now is in the press when, you know, men, particularly men in power, are getting caught doing bad things. They sort of say like, oh, like, yeah, I'm going into rehab for sex addiction, and this is my addiction. You know, and that's the kind of stuff I'm like, I mean, for some of them, I'm sure it's true, but that's the thing that sort of brings up my
Well, the whole
curiosity.
thing is like, from what I've been told, and maybe it's correct, I don't want to speak from, you know, knowledge necessarily, but I've been told that many people that have a true sex addiction don't take pleasure from it. And that's the sign. That's one of the signs, is when you're doing this thing all the time you used to love, and all of a sudden it's not bringing...
It's a box you have to check. It's a burden. It's an itch you have to scratch, but it's not necessarily
Just like any other
So
addiction.
I guess what I'm saying
exactly.
is, if
Any
you're,
other
if
addiction.
you're in a marriage and you're not digging the sex, it might not be that your husband's a shitty lover. You just might be a sex addict. It's just now starting to not feel good.
I think that's, no, I think it's much more likely that your husband is illiterate. And
Illiterate.
needs
Oh,
I tell you,
illiterate.
man, that shit is tight. I like
Or
Got
that.
the wordplay out here.
Or
I told
willfully
you, man.
ignorant, one or the other.
Yeah. I think men just don't realize. And I think the other problem is women don't talk about it, right? Because women are taught.
I was gonna bring that up. I was gonna say, like, how am I supposed to be better if I don't know to be better?
Well, and women are taught that you're supposed to orgasm with your vagina. That's not true. This is not real. That has literally been like pedagogically put into medical textbooks where it's like Freud said that clitoral orgasm is an immature orgasm, and a vaginal orgasm is a mature orgasm. And if you're not having vaginal orgasms, there's something wrong with you. And so they turn that into a whole diagnosis.
When it's really an individualized thing. From my experience, it's like some women have no problem with both. Some women are more one than the other. It's like harder to have one versus the other. Sometimes it's not ever the same day.
Yeah.
When the two happen, people switch back and forth. So it's always really hard to... and you know, you could speak to men, but also like anyone that's intimate with anybody, it's really easy to get stuck in like your own patterns of like, this to me feels good, so this is what I'm going to bring to the approach to the other person because it must be the same for them.
Yeah.
And it's very much more of you should look at it like a challenge, like it's something new that I need to learn. It's like, you know, you get in a Formula One race car, you're not going to know what all of the switches and knobs do unless you try them and find out.
And you have to be secure enough for her to say, let's do something else. Like, let's get a sex toy. You know what I mean? Hey, my girlfriend brought it up to me.
I think that's the biggest thing right there is the security, like you're saying.
That's it.
Right
I was like,
as most people aren't secure enough to bring it up and say it. They don't want to hurt feelings, or they don't want to feel weird.
Well, and a lot of men freak the fuck out.
Yeah,
you know,
that's
a lot
the thing
of
too.
men are so insecure that this idea of like, let's bring this in is.
I was like that when
we got to get away from being afraid of it.
Yeah,
and you got to get men into realizing, embrace laziness.
Right.
This is a friend that you bring in halfway through.
Man,
you can take a little breather, catch your breath.
Yeah.
If you're older guy, you can assess your lower back problems for a minute, do some stretching. Right.
Matty.
And all along, you have this handy, handheld helper.
Yeah.
You know, that is doing what you need to do while you take a break and regroup, because like that shouldn't intimidate you. That should be like a gift from God.
Right.
You know, like
that's a good way of viewing it. Well, what you said before, like when I was in a relationship when I was like 22 and she wanted to introduce stuff and she was like, oh, let's get a dildo for me. And I'm like, I got offended. I was like, I'm not good enough. Like, I don't do the trick. Like, you need something else, you know? And that's where I was like, I wasn't mature enough to think outside the box and be like, no, it's not me. It's just, you know, we think, you know,
variety,
something's different, new things. Yeah. It had nothing to do with me.
I also think so. One of the realities is that, again, since most women can't orgasm just from penetration, having a clitoral vibrator is a game changer.
Yeah.
And I also think it's a lot easier if you are in a relationship with someone, you're a woman, you're not sure how they're going to react, to introduce a clitoral vibrator as opposed to introducing a dildo. Not that there's anything wrong with either, but if you're trying to dip your toes in the water, being like, this isn't something I'm penetrating myself with you. Like, that's all, that's all you, boo-boo. But like, this is something
that's all you, boo-boo.
That's all you
penetrate me. You the penetrator.
No, and my favorite thing actually is one of those little bullets. I love those because, you know, in the beginning, it's more like you think about it pretty linear. You're like, oh, this is something I use on her. But if you get, after a while with those little bullets, if you get in the right position, you can put that in a way between the two of you where it'll do very amazing things for the both of you.
Yeah.
Like this bullet that I'm wearing around my neck.
I thought that was a thing. I thought that was a thing that Will Smith helped to erase your memory, Men in Black.
It will. It will. That shit feel kind of good.
I feel it over here.
Keep it from my butthole, though.
I can't feel it.
I might like it.
Let's see.
I might like it.
I might like it.
I might like it.
I do think that's another reason that men are afraid of vibrators.
That's
and
true.
dildos.
They're worried. Like,
you can pass this one down.
Oh, you got another one? Can I put it on? Can I wear it?
How you cut it on?
What?
Well, how you cut it on?
You just go like that.
You clap.
Hold it
You just
down,
got to clap, Carl.
And then you go through the...
Oh, yeah, you can hear. Oh, that
sounds
sounds
like
like a little Jetson spaceship.
Cartoon, Jetson's cartoon.
Yeah.
Let me see that.
That's the Simpsons.
George Jetson.
That's a Simpsons.
You're close enough.
Yeah, it works.
Carl's aging. We're noticing signs of dementia here recently.
Daughter Judy.
Jane, his wife.
Sound like a fly.
Oh,
Yeah.
I like the idea that you have it around your neck, though, because, like, should you get stranded
next episode
on, like, an island,
Zach, you are wrong.
you get stranded on an island, you need essential supplies.
Holy hell.
Like
I think
a knife.
that's right.
This is crazy.
I think the other thing is these are actually TSA approved, so you can take them through the airport.
What?
And just
Mile High Club.
take that shit on the plane
Yeah,
and do your thing.
I don't want to take it because I might chip my tooth.
Touch the titanium.
Doing that shit on the plane, do your thing.
That's strong for a small
It's got power.
one, too, as well.
That shit is powerful.
It feels like my Xbox controller.
I do think it's good. I do think it's good that it has this retrieval chain because the body is a vacuum and this is a very thin.
That's true.
saying,
Although, so again, this is supposed to be a clitoral vibrator.
Yeah.
But you know how
So-
people are.
We're learning.
No.
We're learning.
I do know how people are.
That thing is powerful. It's strong.
It's
like, what
very
kind of
strong.
battery?
That's crazy.
What's the battery
Lithium
life like?
ion. 9-hour battery life.
It's got a Tesla.
What's the battery life like? How do you charge it? I mean,
Yeah.
what do you do?
It's super easy. It's a USB charger. Most of the new vibrators are USB chargeable.
Oh, it's skipping. It's skipping.
Oh, she got a remote. Is that a remote for it?
Oh,
or what's that one? That's a
straight.
different
No,
one?
that's a different one.
Oh,
That's the XL version.
This shit is skipping.
That's
It's
that's the Cuban link.
Yeah, because it has different things. So you might want
That's
a
the
pattern.
Cuban Pete. He's the
That's
king
the
of the
Cuban link.
Rambam Pete. Right.
Carl love brushing his teeth.
No, and it's interesting too
like,
because
you be like, what the? This ain't my toothbrush.
and here's the other thing too. Like a lot of men think too much about them doing the men think about sex as like I'm doing something.
I'm the
to you,
machine.
right? So I'm
the
gonna do this.
machine.
I'm gonna do that. Slow your roll down. Take a minute and let her use the toy during sex, and you just watch because that is art. That's art. If you are lucky enough to watch that happen, that's art, right? So instead of you always being the one,
You feel like
appreciate
you
the
have to
fact
be
that
the
she
machine.
knows how to use this thing better than you do. Chances are,
Right.
yeah.
You
or
feel like
simultaneously. I mean, there's, again, with the clitoral vibrators, there's no reason you can't use them simultaneously.
Yeah.
Carl, your phone's ringing.
Oh, is it? Let me answer it.
It is.
Hello, Chief.
Can you imagine? That's how
Hello,
strong?
Chief.
if
What?
that's-
I'm on my way.
I'm on my way. If that's how strong the iPhone vibrator is.
Are we ready for more?
Yeah, right.
Keep passing
She's
around.
stepping it up. I like that you're kind of stepping it up like it's hot sauce. Like we're slowly.
So that was a 9mm. That was a 22. That's a 9mm.
Yes, sir. We like gangsters. We like sex gangsters. Hey, yo, bring me that Glock.
So this, you have the 2 prongs. So imagine your lady's clit goes right here. So it's a good thing. So your nose is the closest thing to having the sensitivity of your clit. 8,000 nerve endings. So if you want to get a sense
of our clits.
Yeah, I know. It must be so hard to go through life without a clit.
No.
Like you have.
I feel like even if men had a clit, they still couldn't find it.
We wouldn't.
They
be able
wouldn't.
to.
You know what? It's like not.
Man, where you at? Trying to find my clit?
Trying to find my clit.
Been looking all week long.
Okay, let's just myth bust a little bit here because the clit is reliably in the same place every time.
Right.
So if you can't find it, it's sort of like you're not really. It's just sort of a dumb.
I mean, and if you're upside down, it's not really the same spot.
That's like when you ask somebody to take out the trash. You're like, I don't know how to do it.
Just put this on your nose and
just
sit in the corner.
put this on your nose, clit.
Just sit in the corner.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm almost there.
This shit is crazy, man. Somebody is so creative that's creating this shit.
Oh, you have no idea the variety, man. It's funny because
This is the Easter
people
special.
still tend to think of a singular or a couple of different shapes and sizes and things. And the world of sex toys in the last 10 years, for example, has been so influenced by cosplay. I can't even tell you, number one, which is amazing, some of these crazy things that are out, but shapes, sizes, varieties, textures, what it does inside and outside at the same time.
Well, also women designers have gotten into sex toys,
Right.
which is amazing because most sex toys up until about 10 years ago were designed by men. There's a fantastic designer who designed a lot of these named T. Chang. She's the
It's like the same as the lingerie story.
2 Chainz mama.
She's teaching us.
She is the
this
founder
off.
of Crave. You just hold it down. I know it gets frustrating.
Of Crave? Is that
every
a sex
time.
toy company?
Crave
Crave?
is a sex toy company. Yeah, they're a great one.
Like
But-
jumping cables.
But like, if you looked in a sex store, you can see the ones that are designed by men, right?
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
like this huge phallic, like lime green
Very
shit that's
predictable.
like turning. Yeah, I know. I thought we were gonna make him bobble a little, give him a little enjoyment with some of our yeah.
Hey, people, make sure you find the clitoris.
It's not Arvidas Sabonis, it's Arvidas Saboner. Now to this
There you
episode.
go. There you go.
Yeah.
Carl, you didn't laugh at my joke.
No, I'm focused, man. I'm
Focused.
Carl, you would have appreciated that one. It was a basketball joke.
Sabonis.
And now
I
the
said
one
Saboner.
the one that you're
Yeah.
presenting now, this is my favorite.
That's a
Yeah.
that's a
This is my
clarisonic.
It does,
Yeah,
right? You
you-
can do
yeah,
your
you-
skin. Oh, facial.
No. This is my favorite.
Different facial.
Yeah,
Oh,
exactly.
Different facial.
just
All right,
hold
you
it
guys.
down.
You guys got to settle down. settle
This
down.
shit is so fun.
We got to go through the products.
Okay, so this is a suction vibrator. They're new, and it's meant pretty much to simulate oral sex, right? So if you turn it on, and I'll turn it up. If you just give me,
I sound like the neighbor cutting grass.
if you just give me your finger here, right? This doesn't really feel like anything, right? That's
No,
nothing.
it don't.
Okay, ready? So imagine, here's your clit, okay?
Mm-hmm.
You see the suction that's
Yep,
coming
I
off
do.
of there?
I'm gonna get my arm ready. I'm just give me that
Yeah, I know.
shit.
Like a hit. Come on, man. Come
Give
on.
me that shit.
Zach waiting for that shit like
Hey,
it's a
do it on
hit.
my neck right here.
See,
Do it
I
right
understand. I'm like watching you.
Yeah,
I understand the difficulty that sex ed teachers must have had.
sure.
You know, you're trying to explain something and they just can't.
The problem that sex ed teachers have isn't the kids,
Right.
it's the parents.
Right, what they're allowed to say.
Because the parents want abstinence only sex education. They don't want to teach their kids about any of these things. And that's problematic, right? So when we talk about things like rape culture in our country or these other things, it's really easy to understand where that comes from in a world where we don't talk about women's pleasure. Because then sex seems like something that is exchanged. Oh, this woman gave it up for this guy. Why won't she give it up for me?
I
It's
talk a lot
not-
about that. Like,
Yeah.
it's I did that to her. I made her come.
Right.
It's always I did this.
Right.
As opposed to like she came.
Yeah.
Now,
Why is it so different or so difficult for people to make that switch? I don't get it.
I feel like it's a masculinity thing where they're like, oh,
It
yeah, I
is.
did
It
that.
is.
I made her come. That was
Yeah.
me.
it is. But check this out. Speaking, you said that. Now, Mythbusters. I like when you said that earlier.
Yeah.
How about when guys think they make women squirt?
When guys think that
Speaking of,
yeah, no, little mouth squirt.
What are
When-
you doing, Levi?
When men think that vibrators make women squirt, or they
Or
don't.
they-
think
that
it's
they-
them.
that
I
they
made
do
her
it.
squirt.
I mean, some women squirt and some women don't.
Yeah.
It's
Because
like,
what is it? What is squirting actually?
What is squirting actually?
Yeah.
It's just a release of the fluid. The same fluid that's in female ejaculate, which is really just white blood cells.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Damn, look at that white blood cells.
Yeah.
And it's important to realize that just what she said, not everybody does it. Don't expect it from somebody that's never done it. Don't think you're going to make somebody do
That's
it.
it.
It also doesn't equate necessarily to a better orgasm. You know, I think because people sort of equate it to like men and they're like, oh yeah, she was so like horny, she came the way that a guy comes, you know, or something like that, which is ridiculous, right? Because the clit has 8,000 nerve endings and your sad little penises have 3,000 nerve
My
endings.
sad little penis. First of all, my penis is happy, okay?
Yeah.
It's a joyous penis. My penis ain't sad. Don't just be...
Well, if you're born with 2 penises, you got 6,000. We're almost there.
Well, no, it's a good point. I talk about that a lot. Like I've never had that feeling of like, I wish I was a woman. However, I would love to experience orgasm as a woman, like a true, deep, multi-level orgasm.
And it can it lasts so much longer. We're just like, okay, done.
Yeah. I tell you what I enjoy with my sweetheart is I've been with her for going on 5 years and it's nothing like climaxing together.
Oh yeah.
Nothing like it.
I
Nothing
agree.
like it. And when you get done, you still want to be right next to that person and cuddling. Sometimes when you ski, you hit the streets. You out. You like, woo.
No, but that's a connection.
What time is it? Gotta go.
That's a connection right there.
It is.
But hot tip, if you want to orgasm together, use a vibrator
Right.
because often, and you can have simultaneous orgasms, but not if you're like, oh no, you can only use my dick to pleasure yourself.
You can only use that dick.
Yeah, it's not.
And it might happen faster with a toy.
Oh yeah.
Fast as shit.
Should have multiple ones probably before you even get to.
Totally.
You know, cause like you said, cause what did you say? 1997. What was discovered?
In 1998.
1998.
Yep, the full anatomy of the clitoris was discovered.
Full anatomy.
So
That was the Clinton administration, and I don't think that I don't think that's coincidental. You know, I mean, Clinton was out there.
in the oral office.
Clinton.
We got to find out more about the clit.
In the oral office.
That's not the full clit.
Right. We don't know enough about what we need to know.
Too legit to
know,
the clit.
It was discovered in
Too
Australia.
legit.
Otherwise, I would say you're wrong.
legit.
Of course, it would be
Clit.
discovered down under.
Down under. Yeah.
Under.
It works.
I still feel like there's more to be discovered too.
Oh,
you know, I think there's still more, and that's the whole thing is, man, if you can't get open about it, then you're never going to proceed ahead. And I don't know, like that's I think what life is about is trying new things. You're not always going to like everything, but if nothing else, you're going to have a story. I mean, holy shit, some of the best stories I tell on stage are things I wouldn't have normally done, but I was like, yeah, I'll go out of my comfort zone and try this. And half the best stories are the things I didn't necessarily like, you know? And that's what it's all about. And the other thing too, please, couples, go shopping together at the adult store.
That's deep right
Please
there,
do.
Maddie.
And the other, you know why? It forces you to have conversations.
Yes, it does.
Right.
Yes, it does. There's actually a company called O School, and online they have a thing called an orgasm order form. It looks like a sandwich, like a deli sandwich sheet, but you can fill it out and say all of the different things, the different types of touch, the different, different types of penetration.
Like your preference and stuff?
All
or?
of your preferences that
how
you like.
people say like,
And you
oh,
can-
my love language is this is like my pleasure language.
my pleasure language is exactly. And then you can email it to your partner. So it's like if you're more shy and you're like, you know what, let's both do this. And so then you can both look and, maybe they checked like S&M and you had no idea.
Right.
That's an easier way.
It's totally true because I used to talk about that is sometimes there's something you're into and maybe you're too shy to talk about it, right? But if you did say something that your partner might actually be into it, but maybe because you don't say it and they don't hear it, they don't know. That's
true.
So like an example is I had one of these conversations one time and it's like, okay, well, let's sit down and talk about it. Like, what are you into that you're not getting in the bedroom? Because I wanted to be, a good partner. And it comes up, she says like, sex is good, everything's great, but I like to be choked, right? And I wish that you would choke me more.
Right.
And so I'm like, all right, well, it's not, not something that I'm really
Right.
like
Comfortable with.
naturally.
Right.
Yeah,
Right. But at
naturally.
the same time, if I know that's what you're into, like I'll try it out. Who
Yeah.
knows? Right.
Yeah.
And so then she's like, what's yours? And so as a guy, you want to start small. There's a lot. So, go easy on the first few. Don't go, just unveil it slowly. But so my
You mean the choke?
No.
No, but his preference.
When you're talking about what you want,
don't go in right away.
Yeah.
Sure.
This isn't the finals yet.
Yeah.
So don't go that hard in the paint.
Finals.
Yeah.
Hey.
I used a sports
First
reference.
round.
That was for you.
Way to go.
Give him some beat. Give him some beat.
That's called COVID applause because nobody could get real crowds. Anyway.
I will say though, so there's a difference between a fetish and a kink, right? So
Right.
a kink is just something that you like, you're into. A fetish
Kinky.
means that you need that thing in order to
to
orgasm.
be fulfilled.
That makes
all the
in
sense.
way.
order to come. So there are some people who have BDSM as a fetish, and some people that they enjoy it. You bring it into your sex life. It's fun. It's a differentiator. But
And
there
that's
are
a good
people
example,
who need it
Because that's
So-
if it, choking is the thing that you need to really
Right.
feel that release.
That's
and
a trip.
so,
Yeah.
and so I was just like, well, mine's more on the other end. It's just like, well, mine's not something I'm missing. It's just like you give these amazing blowjobs. And like I just want more of that, but I want you to feel subconscious and think that's all they want, right? So we had this conversation, and we realized, like, so here she wants to be choked. Mm-hmm. I want more blowjobs.
Mm-hmm. Let's meet in the middle.
We're saying the same thing, really, if we do this right.
Right.
So how'd that work? If you were
Choking my chicken.
you were choking
Like
her
we
while she's
wasted
giving
so
you
many
blowjobs?
years,
But so to the point of wasting many years, I will say, yes, you don't need to come out with all of your, most intimate sexual fantasies at once. But at the same time,
start comfortably.
sexual compatibility is a huge part of any relationship.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so when people don't talk about those things, have no idea what each other are into, that can be really problematic because all of a sudden you pull out like, oh, I have, an adult diaper fetish, which is, there are a lot of people in the world with adult diaper fetishes. It blows my mind, but it's true. And that is probably not the type of thing that you want to wait until like the wedding night.
Right. You don't want to do it on, that's a good point. Like, don't do it on the first date.
Yeah.
But
You both
also
put your name
don't
on
wait
mortgages.
until the honeymoon night.
Right.
Like, by the way,
Hey, babe, put this on real quick.
I'm really into Star Wars,
Yeah.
and I'm going to need you to dress up. Yeah.
Like Chewbacca.
So
daddy.
what brought you? Good Lord, that's accurate. So, what?
You're the likes.
I hit a kink. Like you said, some things are a kink. He needs it to get by.
Yeah.
So, what got you comfortable and into wanting to educate other people? What made the switch from being, this is a thing I'm just interested in exploring for myself, to
passion.
I want to take this and help other people with it?
Well, I think it goes back again to the female genital mutilation and thinking, if we can't even talk about this comfortably, if we can't understand our own bodies, we're never going to fix this problem. And then, ultimately became bigger than that, which was we need a vocabulary to talk about our bodies. We need language. We need people to be comfortable.
We need other women to be comfortable speaking favorably about
100%.
exploring their sexuality.
Right. And I think for a lot of people, you've been shamed, you've been,
Yes.
you've been slut shamed. I'm not judging anybody who is faking orgasms. I'm not judging anybody who is, not coming out and talking about what they like. But it's a problem. It's not going to move us forward. It's not going to make our sex lives better. It's not going to make our love lives better. It's not going to make intimacy better. No. It's going to keep people stuck.
Yeah.
And I also think there's a big need for men in the opposite way. There's a big need for it to be able to be open for men to talk about using sex toys as well.
Yeah.
Because it's the same kind of thing. There's this big stigma that if as a man you use a sex toy when you're not with a partner, that's somehow gross or that somehow should be
Weird
shameful
or something. Yeah.
But why shouldn't a man be able to walk in with as much confidence into a sex shop and go over to that section and pull something out? But if you've ever worked at a sex shop or spent any time in that environment, you can clearly see the difference in comfort between a woman that walks into a sex shop, knows what she wants, goes.
You could even see it if you just go in.
And then a guy that goes in and maybe he's trying something new, but that difference and that timid feel, it's all part of that psychology.
Right.
So as much as I want to, like with this show, talk about how women should talk about that, I think men should be more open about that. Like if you use a sex toy, even if you have to make it funny to talk about it, like be open with other men, because people shouldn't have to go for long enough time, you know, without anything, or shouldn't have to always do the same thing. You should think about your sex life as not always needing a partner, and your exploration is not always needing a partner. You should be exploring on your own so that when you get to the big game, you have some plays.
Well, even your comment
Second sports
earlier,
reference.
even your comment earlier about how if you incorporate sex toys in certain ways, it becomes more pleasurable for a male partner too. If you're having heterosexual sex, every man who has played around with their girlfriend's sex toys knows that, but they all talk about it in whispers. It's like, oh yeah, I like it too. No,
but it's never like
It's not like,
It's never
dude,
like, bro,
you gotta try this, man.
Let me tell you about last night.
I'll take you to the castle.
Yeah.
I'll take you to the castle, bro. You got to get one.
Touch my chain, it vibrates. Touch my chain.
Right. Exactly.
It's only recently
I've got
that
you a
women,
necklace.
Time that was
it's only recently that women have
you were
felt comfortable enough talking among each other as well in that open way. I feel it's like not super recent, but
and
within
I think
10
like
years.
certain subsections of women, right? Like I don't think all women, unfortunately.
Actually, you know what I think is responsible partially, and I hate to give this credit, but Sex in the City. Sex in the City helps, I think, a lot of people feel less repressed about talking openly between girlfriends about sexuality.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
I never watched it. Mine was Family
Sex
Guy.
in the City was huge. It was watch party time. It was like
There's
It was
also
a big
also
show.
some really unhealthy things in that show. I don't want to glamorize
True.
it, but it got people talking.
true, but also I remember, man, like when I was younger, good God, I got excited for HBO Real Sex. Man, you ever that series used to come on?
I used to watch that show with the old lady at night talking about the sex toys. What's that lady's name? Do you know what I'm talking about? She was an
Ruth?
old, Dr. Ruth.
Dr.
I was gonna say Ruth. I thought it was Ruth.
Legend.
Dr. Ruth. Yeah, she talks, and she was like, I've never seen somebody more comfortable than her to talk about anything. And she just like, it's like another day at the office. I'm like,
Just the
oh my
way-
gosh.
And just her accent, because what is she, French or what is Dr. Rich?
I don't think she was.
And what she said, Torres
Did
is
she?
like, yeah.
Oh, she had a little accent. Okay,
Yeah,
you
she's
might
like a
be
little.
right.
I think she's French.
Oh, she did. No, she did have
I think she's
some sort of English
and
accent.
she's
or
like
something.
5 feet and just like very with like you
Super
talking-
comfortable. Like
very
nothing,
comfortable.
There's nothing that would have shocked her. She
I
would have
can
been like,
tell
what
you-
the heck?
She is definitely far more comfortable to take sex advice from than Drew, Dr. Drew,
Dr.
that guy.
Dr. Drew.
Like, I think, and maybe you could comment on this. Like, is what you look like important in sex education? Boom.
I think it goes both ways, because I think in one way you can become hypersexualized by the people you're talking to, because they assume like, because you're talking about sex education, that anything is fair game. They can say anything, they can make inappropriate comments. On the other side of it, you can get to somebody who is older or not conventionally attractive, and they're going to have the issue of maybe being taken seriously. But I will say, to a certain extent, someone like Dr. Ruth, it's like, what makes it really easy, it doesn't feel dirty because it feels like your grandma, right? And so it's like, if she's comfortable with this, if someone who looks like my grandma is comfortable with this, then why is this making me so uncomfortable?
Yeah.
And so I think that in that case, it's very powerful.
That's a good point, because the biggest part of American sexual taboo is it's okay for me, but not for them.
Right.
And
Not
what
for
I
them.
mean by that is like, no one wants to think about their grandmother's journey to find her sexuality. Because no, let's not talk about that, because she's not allowed. I am.
Right.
And let's not talk about my kids and what that's like for them and them learning their own sexuality. No, we can't talk about that, because it's only okay for me. And that's a thing that we have to get out of as a society, is like, you should want your grandmother to orgasm.
In fact, I bought my grandmother a vibrator.
Hell yeah. That's what I'm talking about.
Necklace?
No. I bought her a bullet vibrator.
Is it a
because she was
combo
talking-
life alert? Like in
Life
case she
alert.
comes too
Life
hard
alert.
and she falls and
Ooh,
can't get up.
I'll
It's like,
fall and they can't get
she
up.
double taps the
I
button.
still can't get up.
But I
I'm
think
not going to get up. I'm not getting up.
I think what you're saying is right, where we have to create this space where it's like, I want everyone in my life to have an awesome sex life. I don't need to
Right.
know about it. Like, do I want
Right.
to think about my parents having sex? No.
No.
Do I want them to not have a sex life or have a shitty sex
Exactly.
life?
No.
Absolutely not. And like, what kind of asshole are you if that's
Right.
really
It's
what
only
you
going to bring
It don't
them
matter to
closer if
me.
they do.
Yeah.
I don't
But I
give a
think-
shit if my mom don't get
I
no
think
more
a-
dick. I don't give a
But that's
you're not
part of
I
it.
would be an
responsible.
asshole. Like, Mom, no.
Mom, no. But
I used to cop block my mom hard. Like, I didn't want any. My mom, I remember my mom stopped dating because my mom opened up to me that she was really sexually active a lot.
Yeah.
And so my mom, I never forget when I started becoming of age, when my hormones was kicking in, my mom had a discussion with me about how it works as far as when a man orgasms and a woman, what that means to that woman compared to what it means to a man. And my grandfather used to say to me, you ain't doing nothing but busting a nut. That's all you doing. Like, you don't know what you doing. Like, I'm like 16 years old horn dog. And they're explaining to me what it all entails. Like, you talking about something like a woman's giving you her.
Yeah.
She's just not spreading her legs. She's giving you her, and you just busting a nut. You just getting your little.
But I don't think that's true.
No, well, when I was young,
I think it can be. I think it can be, and I think people are taught to be that way, right? So our sort of gender norms teach girls to sort of feel that way and experience sex that way, and men vice versa. But I know a lot of women who think of sex very casually, and I even have friends who are like are very clear and very articulate with partners of like, oh, this is just a one night stand, this is just casual, and men can't even conceive that it could be casual for a woman. So
It's happening, but it's slow.
Yeah. I think when my mom was trying to educate me of being a man, of how you don't just go out there and sow in your wild oats.
Right.
I think she was letting me know to treat a woman with respect and
Right.
understand.
Yeah, that was a lesson.
Yeah, to understand that woman. A man probably comes from a different place of like casual sex.
Right.
Chances are the woman really likes you and wants to have a relationship with you. That's why they take 3 to 4 months to give you some sex. So next thing you know, you get that sex and you boom, you're out and it fucks with them.
I wouldn't disagree with that teaching because that's only
her face like you could bust a nut and get the fuck out of my house.
I wouldn't disagree with
take that stale ass little Caesar pizza you brought over here. I just wanted to fuck anyway. Coming over here with a flat ass 2-liter Sprite and a little Caesar pizza.
I don't need these stale ass chocolates. It was never about this.
Exactly.
It's never about the snaps.
It was never about that. I don't need you to play with my kids.
That's so funny. I wouldn't disagree with that teaching because it's just gonna, I feel like, shape better individuals. But in the reality of the situation, like you said, I think it happens both ways more often than we think. There are women out there that just like to have casual sex. There are men out there that like to have casual sex.
There are men out there who don't like casual sex.
Who means more to a guy, and he's like, what? I thought we had something.
Well,
they're like, nah, we really didn't.
I feel for you.
The biggest thing that people, I think, screw up with as far as sexuality is you don't know what you like.
Oh, sure.
Unless you try things, right? But if you prejudge, like, oh, I'm not going to like that. Like, based on something, I'm not going to like that. I'm not going to try that because I know I wouldn't like that. And that's also a thing about if you're in a longer-term relationship that makes it kind of fun is that most people haven't really tried as much as they think.
Right.
Like, I think there's a large percentage of vanilla sex that happens in America, and people are like, oh, yeah, I kill it in the bedroom. But in reality, it's like, in your small window of what you've tried, you're doing really great, which is unfortunate because you've had a lot of practice at boring the shit out of somebody if you're not looking at a larger spectrum. And so I think the other thing that's great about it is when you do that as a couple, or whether it's a casual thing or not, when you do try things out, you get these great moments where it doesn't work and it's funny as hell.
Yeah,
and sharing that experience where you're intimate with somebody and you're vulnerable and like, we tried it didn't work.
Well, and that's intimacy, right? Like who's going to clean the cum off the ceiling? Like that is
That's great.
Yeah.
There's your soundbite for
I don't know who in the fuck can make it to the ceiling.
I do. People who have gone without for a long period of time.
Hell no, that shit going right on my stomach.
That's so funny. I think a lot of that, like not knowing what you like and not understanding certain things or trying certain things out is like a lot what you said earlier is the negative connotation that has kind of been taught in schools and sex is bad,
and
stay away from sex, the abstinence, growing up in church where sex is this evil bad thing to do when really it's a huge part of life and it's a huge part of happiness. And if we were able to, that's why I don't really agree with a lot of the school stuff, but that's a different subject. But anyways, teaching it like that, you're taught at a young age to stay away from sex, to not have sex. So you're not going to be like thinking, oh, how am I going to enjoy pleasure? What am I? Well,
I want to make that bigger point too. At the same time as that, you're not allowed to enjoy. You're not allowed to progress. Like, quick survey: do you own a sex toy?
Yeah.
For you?
Yeah.
Right. Do you own a sex toy for you?
What do you mean for me?
A sex toy
that you use for
made
yourself.
for men,
like to stick up my butt.
No.
Or that
you gotta clarify this shit, man.
Like to stick on my butt.
But I ain't gonna lie, I'll tell you, man. But like you gotta clarify.
Like a fleshlight or a synthetic vagina, anything like that.
No.
When you were single. No. Right. No. If you had, would that be something you would feel like you had to hide away? Make sure that nobody saw?
No, I doubt it.
I'll answer that, yes.
Yeah. No, not for me. I actually, man, check this out. Y'all know I'm 50. And I didn't start masturbating until I was in my 30s.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, was that a comfort thing, like with the idea of it?
That's just when he got his dick.
That's when I got my dick back.
He's one of them slow puberty
I got my
kids.
dick back. It was like, the motherfucker came and repoed that bitch. Was.
Yeah, you weren't paying your bills.
Child support. It was like,
We taking a third of that dick.
Carl, how'd you have 16 kids? And
he
you
don't know how to pull
time?
out. He don't know how
That's
to pull
exactly
the fuck out.
how he had
don't know
16
how to pull
kids.
out.
It's because he never masturbated.
The motherfucker pulled up at my house with a tow truck.
No, but that's
come on.
Wow.
That's a
Put it out.
serious
30.
That's a serious probing question. So what was it?
Probing.
Was it because it took that long in your life for that to feel like that was okay, or was just I never got around to it?
Okay, let me tell you what's up. So I never really thought about it all because I started having sex pretty young and continued on to have sex. So it was like it was no problem getting any. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was no problem. But what happened is my kid's mom, I was seeing her and I was emotionally, I was checking out a relationship because it's very toxic. And then, but I still wanted my nut.
Right.
Yeah.
Your needs
So
met.
I was like, let me try it. And there we go.
And that's how it started.
Yeah, because I didn't want to have, I
So
wasn't.
that's very much like I just never got around to it.
Yeah, because check this, I just never got around to it. Like, why you didn't check the mail? That's different, man. I thought you were going to cut the grass.
I just never got around to it.
Yeah,
I thought you was going to beat off. I will, goddamn, let me.
like something you haven't got around to. Like, how come you?
Yeah. But
no,
check
I just
this
mean
out.
to say because I know a lot of people who have had similar experiences, but for a totally different reason, is they did not feel
Like it was right.
comfort enough because they thought they would feel so much shame.
Yeah.
Well, that's another question. How did you feel after doing it for the first time? Were you like,
it was
like a whole new world?
exactly, man. Like that's
Close
fucking,
your thighs.
Oh, there you go. Nice
like
ad-lib.
birds was flying through. It was just like zippy da doo da, zippy day. Can't wait to masturbate every day. Like zippity-doo. I was fucking taking lunch breaks. Where you going? Like, okay, man, let's go to lunch.
I'll be
together.
right back.
No, player. I'll be back. You stay here. You stay,
See,
right?
you got lucky because you must have been good at it right away. Some people, it takes them a while to get good at it, and they like even give up.
Well, check this out, man. That's a good point. So the thing is, let me see if you can, in this part of sex education too,
Sure.
I started to resent her ass. I couldn't really stand her, and I had no attraction to her. Because, like, you know what I'm saying? We just talked about that. We talked about that before. I mean, we talked about that, fellas, about
Perspective changes.
Yeah. So I just was like, fuck it. So so then, Matty, like, by the time I was like backed up, so all it took was one shots fired.
Shotgun.
That's when it went to the
I was
ceiling.
like-
Yeah, that's when you
Yeah.
have to clean
The
the
fucking
ceiling.
dogs the cats was
Everyone in the house flinched, even
the
if they were in the
neighbors,
same
the neighbors
room.
called the police. Like, we heard some shots fired. You good? Like,
Yeah, I'm good now.
where your pants at, Carl? I'm good.
Speaking of,
That's
here's a great
crazy.
question. Here's a great question.
Yep.
I'm curious for Zach.
Okay,
All right.
let's hear it.
So, what was the way you were raised? Was sex
Yeah.
something you could openly talk about?
You know, I had a really crazy upbringing, and sex was very prominent in my life at a young age. Noticing what it is, knowing what it is. I have a story I'm comfortable with sharing. I don't want to talk to my mom, but when I was 6 or 7, when I would stay with my mom, she was an escort, and she would take me with her to her escort appointments.
That's deep, man.
Yeah.
And that shit was
Thank you.
so for me at the time, I didn't understand. I was like, oh, you know, I love my mom. She just wants me with her. But I didn't realize I was going to this house watching cartoons on some guy's screen, and my mom's banging him out, and then we leave. But I mean, for her sake, that's how she made money, and that's how she supported me too. So at the same time, I'm just like, I didn't think anything of it. But now, especially myself having a daughter now too, I keep that as far away as I can. You know what I mean? I don't want her to like experience anything like that. I want to talk to her about sex in a healthy way and educate her when she's comfortable, when she's of the age to learn about it. But the way I learned it, it was all it was negative, you know. My dad actually has a charge that from when he was younger as well, and that was something that was prominent in our life that we learned about growing up. And so sex was really negative for my childhood growing up as far as learning from it. But as I got older and experienced other things and doing my own research, listening to talks, listening to shows on HBO and things like that, I've learned that it's, you know, not something that you should be ashamed of. Everybody does it. Everybody goes through it.
I think there's such a danger in when people feel like they can't talk about it, because then you're getting misinformation a lot, because no one's really talking about real shit, and everyone's just kind of like, that's how it is.
Yeah.
And then no one wants to disagree.
Yeah.
But also on the flip side too, with that, sex to me was always taught that that's how you were shown that you were loved. if that makes sense.
It does. It makes
Someone
a lot of sense.
someone loves you because they're willing to have sex with you. So that's how you're loved. So even, you know,
Even the way you said it, willing
Right.
to, which is very self-defeating. Like
Right.
someone's willing to sleep with me. It's
Right.
like,
Or it sort of takes
how
the
about-
autonomy away from the woman, right?
Right.
Because it's like
Exactly.
she's willing. It's like she's willing to give it
Exactly.
up for me, as opposed to like she wants to have sex.
Yeah,
with
exactly.
Me.
Somebody
she wants
wants.
to jump my bones.
Right,
but
exactly.
People,
So
people, even that small language, we don't know how
Yeah.
much it's in.
So it was really like, you know, you're not loved unless this person has sex with you, kind of thing. And even in my young adult life, it was still like that. And after having a daughter and kind of, you know, growing up a little bit, I've learned to realize that obviously that's not the case, but that's always like, that's what sex was to me. So that was really hard for me, you know, in relationships, or like, oh, she doesn't love me because she won't have sex with me. And
Right.
it's, and the ultimate reality could be she doesn't have as high of a sex drive as I do, or,
Right.
you know what I mean? It's
She
like,
might not be there.
right. So, and that's something that I've dealt with, and I've learned to deal with, and gain more knowledge on, and, you know, figure out as I've gone on in life.
But how would you say, because that's a really difficult, you know, I would say, thing to unlearn, you know, when you have these huge associations with sex and sexuality, and to turn them so that you can have a healthier, happier, more productive sex life is a thing that
Right.
so many people need to deal with, right? Because
Yeah.
so many
Well, see,
people
I
have
remember-
Deal with it.
hard,
You gotta deal with
you
it.
got to
Right.
deal with it. But
I
there are-
remember mine was a weird kind of combination. So I was raised in this really religious house, and it was like, you did not talk about it at all. But yet my dad was like really open about it in a weird way. So it was like this weird thing where like no one's allowed to talk about it unless dad's going overboard and talking when you don't really want to hear it, kind of thing.
Right.
And so it was not only like taught to be like, oh, this is shameful, you don't share this with people, but at the same time, I also had like oversharing when it was shared. So it wasn't like a comfortable medium between the two. And so I just learned to, like, if I was going to explore that, it had to be when none of those people were around in any way or shape or form, or had a chance of ever being there. And that's a really sad way to have to learn about.
Right.
You know,
But
people,
you're learning on your own at that point.
like, you know, at some point in certain societies, children ask their parents very openly about sex, and but not in the same way we do in America. We ask for basic information because we feel like that's all we're supposed to
Basic
get.
information.
Right.
But in some countries, you know, somebody will say, like, Father, I'm about to take this woman as my bride. Like, how do I be a good lover? And then the dad will comfortably sit down and orally, you know, talk about.
Stroke it to the east, the
But
stroke
I
it
think,
to the
but
west.
like you said, with those
the stroke it to
conversations,
the
a lot of it here in America, it's all about reproduction. It's not
Right.
about pleasure.
That is
None of it is about
exactly
pleasure.
right.
That's it. That's what she
It's
was
all
saying about
it's
the-
all about oh well, a man and woman get together because they want to have a baby, and that's how it is.
Which
Hands
is
down,
which
I
is
can-
bullshit, right? Because how many times in your life, even if you have a lot of kids,
Right.
how many times in your life are you having sex for procreation?
Zero of
That's
them
what
were-
I was going to
actually,
say.
after
I
had
have
my first
never
child.
once.
I never.
Right. So
I've
our
never-
entire
never
sex
went
education
in.
is really reproductive education,
That's it.
which is only relevant for
Never went in
0
like that.
to 4
Yeah.
sexual experiences throughout your life.
Right.
It doesn't make any sense. And
doesn't.
the other problem is, you know, people are saying, so many people say, oh, I don't want my kids to learn about, you know, sex from the school. But of course, they're not teaching them anything about sex. So what I say to parents is, okay, so what you're saying is you're not going to talk to them. You don't want the school to talk to them. Do you know how your kids are going to learn about sex?
Porn.
Porn.
That's
Porn
how I
or
learned.
just doing it,
That's how I learned. It was
and not in a
porn.
protective
And,
way.
and
either.
what
Right.
are you really more uncomfortable with?
Right.
Right.
Them watching pornography or just having a fucking
Or
conversation?
talking to your
Yeah.
But
shitty
then even
kid.
that is so negative. So it's like you said, you're not going to learn. You're not going to teach them. Now they're going to watch porn, and now you're mad at them for watching porn.
Yeah.
So what the fuck is happening? Like,
Right.
how are they
Yeah,
going to
you
learn
bet- you-
anything?
You might want to teach them about that before they get into porn,
Right,
because
right.
porn can give them the wrong idea.
What I'm taking
or
from
how it works. How,
what I'm
how you
taking
do it.
from this episode is let the children have porn.
I think let the children have education.
Education,
Yeah,
for
Let
sure.
the children
That's
have
why I
Pink
need
Floyd
That's
shit.
But we have to
sure.
clarify. You know, you don't understand how you have to clarify for people that listen to these kind of things.
Sure.
And again, don't take it out of context. I'm not saying show
Right.
your children porn, but if your children admit that they have been looking at pornography,
Don't scold them. Educate
yeah,
them.
don't
No.
make them feel.
Yeah, because man, that's a
educate
good
them.
point. Because as a young boy, when you tell your dad, "I have an erection,"
Mm-hmm.
you know what I mean,
Right.
and then because you know a lot of
Like,
times,
what is this? And he's gonna be
Yeah.
like, don't talk about that.
and then at a certain age when you discover masturbation by accident,
Right.
You can't tell. You can't. Can you go to mom? Has a girl?
No.
Can you go to dad? And,
And I will say that though, like my mom was super cool. Whenever I did have like the gumption to ask a scary question, like despite the religious upbringing, and I'll never forget. Like I asked her one time about masturbation because like at that point in my life, it was like a fucking crisis because according to what I was reading in the Bible, I was going to go to hell. Right. But according to what my body's doing, this feels kind of
Real good.
Yeah.
But like I'm also afraid to really do it because at the same time, the first time, right?
Right.
Even though the paradox is Jesus died for my sins, shouldn't I sin a few times? Like,
yeah.
you know what I mean? Come on.
We're getting
gonna
a
die
touchy
for nothing?
subject now.
That's
Here we go.
bust a nut.
Here we go.
But I will say that like when I brought that up to my mom, it's like, this is a thing. I know it's a thing. People talk about it. How does this work with our like religious beliefs? And I'll never forget, like my mom's response was, I don't really know what I'm supposed to tell you other than like the church says you're not supposed to date anyone unless you're ready to marry them. So you're not really supposed to have any access to anything up until that point. And she just said, like, I don't know what to say other than like, if it feels good, do it.
Right.
And that's literally the best
awesome.
thing that she
best.
could have said because even though raised with that much shame and being American and having that much shame around sex, like as that part of my life started to develop, I would think back about that of like this formative person in my life was telling me like, you know what, if it feels good, don't always automatically assume it's a bad thing or that it's
Good point. Yeah.
Right.
I have a friend who has a 4-year-old, and people don't realize this, but like little kids are touching themselves all the time because they have no shame around it. They're like, oh, this feels
boy.
good.
Feels good. I'm going to do this.
And so her daughter was like, we were all watching like cartoons or something, and her daughter just started touching herself. And I was sort of like, like, I wonder where this is going to go.
Yeah.
And she got up and went to her daughter and said, honey, like, that's totally fine. Like a lot of people do that. Right. You're allowed to touch your body in any way that makes it feel good, but you have to do that in the privacy of your own room.
That was a great response.
Go to your sandbox.
That's such an amazing. That was like a proud moment for you. You're like, oh my god.
Yeah.
And I know
it blew my mind. I was like, this girl is going to have such a healthy relationship with her body.
And I actually know a couple.
Yeah.
And if they ever listen to this, they'll know it's them. Which is
I'm not gonna say the name. But
I
James
know a
and
couple
Lisa.
where the daughter, I don't know her exact age, but it's young enough where people are uncomfortable with it.
Yeah.
Right.
Probably around 8 or 9, I'm gonna guess. And she's doing the same thing, sort of like, be laying around watching TV. But with her, it's like very obvious what she's doing.
Right.
Like it's not a question like, she just has her hand there, she's comfortable. It's like, it's very clear.
Right.
And she'll kind of just keep going until she's done. Right now, the mom and the dad are both very uncomfortable with this because it's happened in front of people a couple of times. They're like, I'm not sure what to do. And so, of course, the dad won't talk about it because he's an old school guy.
Right.
So he won't talk about it. He leaves it up to her to solve. She doesn't know how to talk about it either because she was raised in a house that never talked. So it's too awkward for her to know how to solve. So like fast forward to, I don't know, a year later, this happens. And now the girl's even older. So now it's kind of like, oh, wow, we got to, nip this in the butt. And his reaction to this is to stand up and look at his wife and tell her that she's trashy because she's not the daughter.
That's messed up.
The wife.
That's messed
for
up.
not having handled this.
I'll punch his ass in the throat.
And that's the thing. Like I know these people, and these kind of things are still happening. That's how backward this idea of sexuality
is. It is.
Because if that man like truly loved his daughter, he would take a moment to try to step up and come
or
up
meet
with
with
a
the wife and
solution.
say, I think she'd be more comfortable with you talking to her. So here's what we should do. This is how it
Yeah,
should
make
happen.
a plan as a couple.
Yeah, not just
Yeah,
leave
don't-
it be and then take it out on your
Shame
wife.
her.
But that's a good point about how our fear of sexuality even goes into how we parent and how it can screw up.
But that also comes from what they were taught too when they were kids.
100%.
So they were taught that it was bad. So now they're teaching their kids it was bad. And
But it's a cycle. Like
it's a cycle.
everything else.
It's a
you
vicious
have
cycle.
to break
So
that
unless
cycle.
we get people like you that are educating on the healthiness of sex and what it means to have good partners and explore, and it's okay to touch your body and have pleasure, we're not going to get anywhere. Unless we have people like you. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yep, most definitely. I saw that big one. Let me see that big one.
Let me see that big
oh,
one.
she's
Let me see that
working up
big
in
one.
size.
The Punisher.
The Punisher.
It looks like it needs to be plugged in, but this.
It does.
Now that's a
old
chain
school.
too, right?
That's old school. That
that's-
shit came out in 79.
It-
My
It's a
grandma
new
has that
version.
mixer.
Yeah,
We make cookies with it. No, I'm just kidding.
So
Cookies with it.
Yeah, so this was actually the Hitachi magic wand. And so it came out in the 60s as a personal, they labeled it a personal massager.
And it was evolved.
You know what a lot of women did with it? They used it as a personal massage.
And they sold that through Avon.
Yeah, they did.
Oh, wow.
That's how it got real popular.
That's why my grandma has it. She was an Avon seller.
I'm not even.
Got that pink Cadillac.
You think that's like actually a joke, but that
No,
for me,
it
that's
is.
like true reality.
Yeah.
It's like those were the first things you would see.
So this is also, they didn't know at the time, because obviously we didn't know the full anatomy of the clitoris.
Right.
But this is obviously, it's fucking huge. And
it's heavy too.
It's heavy. And it gets the,
It's all external.
Stimulates the internal, as well as the external. So that's why it's so effective.
Yeah, this is heavy.
Because it's like that's putting in deeper waves.
Yeah, it's putting in deeper waves. So that's, people look at that and are scared because they think it's an internal. It's not internal. It's external.
Yeah, you don't have to go big.
No.
But nowadays that's actually, you'd be surprised.
Yeah.
So Karina, how do you get the
I'm very familiar
opportunity?
with this.
I'll go grab mine.
How do you get the opportunity of being able to meet with someone to educate them? Like, how do you do you come across
like forums or something?
Like housewives or women who are single now? You know, somebody who might have been married forever, just didn't have a sexual relationship with their husband, came single, ignorant to their bodies, and how do you get the opportunity to educate?
Or do you do it at Tupperware parties?
No, so I did it for a long time as a writer at HuffPost, and then I also had the HuffPost Love+Sex podcast, and that was probably my most effective method of education because we reached a big audience. And what we did, which was super fun, was we took a different question every week. So from our listeners, they would email us a question, and we would spend an episode doing a deep dive into it. And so some of them would be, what's it like to go to a New York sex party? And so we went to a New York sex party so we could tell them what it was like. Some of them were like, I want to explore polyamory, but I don't know how to talk about my wife. Talk about it with my wife. All sorts of different questions, and that led us to all sorts of different places, and that was a lot of fun.
Wow.
That's the coolest thing. I think people don't realize it, and it happens in any kind of therapy, is you work with more people. It expands your own knowledge because you learn about these new things that you could have never just gotten through 101.
Right.
Oh yeah. When I started the podcast, I was like, I'm not vanilla. Like I'm wild. And then I did the podcast and I was like, oh God.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
I had a serious moment like that too. I was like introduced to this website, and it's all based around what fetishes are for people. And it's not really a dating site, but some people treat it that way, but some people also treat it as like this place to go for information.
Yeah.
And so they have this great thing called a glossary of kink. And I'm reading this very long list of things that people are into, and it's very specific. And some of them, it's like, oh yeah, I've heard of that. But then you're getting to these things where you're like, whoa, I had no idea that was all associated with people's pleasure. And it was like such a mind-opening experience of, again, like without exploration, you don't know yourself, what you're really in.
Yeah. Levi, you getting excited over there? I saw you just whip your dick out. Put your dick back in your pants. You are goddamn production manager. You ain't out fluffer. Put your dick back in your goddamn.
Yeah, Levi, don't get canceled, man.
I feel like back onto this topic too. I don't think a lot of people understand how much they would really benefit and enjoy having conversations like this. Until it actually, because they haven't had it. So
How
they're
about
like,
this? How about this?
Because of negative connotation.
Let's start a trend right here on the Heckleproof podcast.
Okay.
That every Valentine's Day, if you're in a couple, right? Every Valentine's Day. I don't know
where this is going.
Me too.
Every Valentine's Day,
do
something out of your comfort zone, whether that is schedule a session. There's a lot of couples sexual therapists that are amazing and can help you have way more memorable sex. People don't even realize, they don't think of therapy as when it's broken. Think of therapy as like a way to go even deeper into whatever you want.
Speaking to the therapist.
Right. But if you go as a couple, man, you would be so surprised at how sometimes having like a person who's sort of professional be in the room.
Right.
You'd think a third party would make it less comfortable. In some ways, a third party that's really like studied in what they do makes it really comfortable to share because you're not going to get judged. And if you start to, you have that third party that's going to check your...
Or they give you that confidence to say, this is okay to do. And then you're like, oh, okay, we can do this. And it feels okay. It's right. we're not bad for this.
And a lot of it's not just learning to be comfortable with it. It's learning how to disagree, learning how to have like things where you're into it, the other person isn't.
Yeah.
And so what are you going to do?
That's a good point, man.
That's all communication.
Point.
That ties into the communication of the relationship too, where you got to be comfortable enough to say, hey, I don't like this.
That's it. Exactly, man.
Like, I'm fine with you doing this, but I don't like this. And then we find a common ground.
Well, and that has to be the thing too, right? Because there are always going to be things that you're not into. So that's why I totally believe in, sex positive education, which is to say, as long as it's consensual, as long as both parties are enthusiastically consenting, it's not any of my fucking business what you do.
Right.
So it's when people are like, oh, that grosses me out. I'm like,
Then
okay,
don't do it.
that
Then don't
gross
do
you
it.
out.
Then turn it
That's
off.
fine.
It's just like with food, you don't like broccoli, but I love it.
Totally.
Hey, just
anything.
stand up.
Totally.
Same way.
Yeah.
We always say that.
Yeah.
Like, well, I might be offended. Well, then don't come.
Don't come.
Yeah.
No pun intended.
Right.
Yeah. Don't come. That's so
Right.
funny.
But I
you
do
don't like
think-
sex toys? Then don't come.
Then don't come. But back to what you said
That
earlier.
would be a flyer for you, by the way.
Yeah, there you go.
The name of your class,
but
and
you
then
gotta-
right on the bottom, if you don't like sex toys, then don't
Don't
come.
come. Yeah.
Oh, that's
totally.
great.
Totally.
And then have you like a little like emoji of you like
Guess not.
with you, just like that.
Yeah, just like that.
Right.
Yeah, I think, and also just having people go to toy stores. I mean, just go.
Yeah, just even
go.
doing that for Valentine's Day.
Just
Yeah.
walk
Go to a
around.
toy store together.
First date,
Just
if
see-
you're courageous enough, go to an adult shop on their first date. It'll be super memorable. You don't have to share that much information. Just go and laugh.
I was working at MTV and I had this moniker of the vagina warrior because I was their sex educator in residence, and that's like what I signed everything off as. This was a very difficult thing to bring up on first dates. And so I developed this mechanism where I would just take all of my first dates to the Museum of Sex in New York.
Wow,
and if they could handle it, and if they
Then you're like, okay,
then
we can
I
do a
was
second
like,
date.
okay, I can now tell you what I do for a living.
Yeah.
And we're
Do you
fine.
see
dope.
how hard
so
women
cool.
have to work to communicate with? Like, that is so much forethought and effort that you put into that.
Because men are, I mean, I have to say, like, there are a lot of men who are very, very uncomfortable with a woman talking about sex, or even a woman talking about what gives her pleasure. It's sort of like, well, how do you know? You know, like, oh, well, you've slept with so many
Yeah,
people that
that's
I mean,
it.
it's
You've
this
never had me before.
judgment.
You don't even know. You've never
Yeah.
had me before.
I'm more like the opposite. Like when a woman's like,
Love
"Oh,
when guys
I've
say
never
that.
masturbated," if they really are being truthful.
Yeah.
Like, "Oh, I've never done it." I'm like, how dare you come to this level without a
No
certain,
pun intended.
without a certain amount of sophistication?
Yeah.
Go do your work. You know,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
people in Ashland say that, like, "Oh, you're doing your work." Like, sexually, do your fucking work. Like,
Yeah.
come with a pro level game that you only get by exploring your own sexuality. Don't show up to the fucking game unequipped.
Yeah,
Like, I'd like to play baseball, but I've got no mitt.
and no hands.
Right. And I'm hoping you'll just walk me the fuck through this.
I ain't got no hands, but I want to play baseball.
I got no. You can be the
it's
base.
true.
You're the base.
I mean, it's like the fetishization of virgins. You know, I'm like, I can't.
I love this point.
I
I'm so
don't-
glad you brought this up. I
how?
say this
Yes.
in comedy all the
I don't
time.
understand how. Like, I would never want to have sex with a virgin.
First
like,
timer.
that's terrible.
That's what I always say about the
Yeah.
remember the
No
whole
offense to virgins, by the way. This
Right.
isn't
Right.
a judgment on
Just have sex with
virgins.
another virgin.
Yeah.
Do you, boo boo?
Experience it together. Learn
Yeah.
together. Grow
Yeah.
together.
when they had the whole Muslim thing about how if you set off a bomb that you're wearing, like you'll go to this place and you'll get 55 virgins.
The extremist Islam.
Extreme,
interpretation,
yeah.
but
Extreme.
Right,
yeah,
this extreme
sure.
belief that your reward for ending your own
Yeah.
life in this violent way and killing other people was that you got 55 virgins. I'm like, that's so frustrating. It's almost fitting. Like, you killed people like for that reason.
For
Like,
that reason.
you should be sexually frustrated
Right.
55
Yeah.
times in a row because. And here's the other thing, like they don't talk about, right? Is it 55 each, or are there 55 and you better kill yourself quick? Because the first time a guy kills himself, he's got 55 virgins.
And then you got to split them.
And then the next guy that kills himself, maybe there's only 20
shit,
left
there's
that
only
are
20
virgins.
left.
that
I
the
feel like
first
you've
guy-
done this bit before.
Yeah.
You're
That's
like,
what I'm
I
waiting
can bring
for.
this into the
That's
conversation.
what I'm waiting for.
Yeah.
But no, that's just all to say how
It's like the
ridiculous this
experience.
idea
Experience.
of like taking.
Right.
And that's the other thing. Why do we call it
It's a badge.
taking
It's a
something?
badge you get. I took
I
their
think
virginity.
virginity is a construct, personally.
Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
it's a total construct.
Yeah.
I don't like as it's only a man could come up with the idea that like, oh, because I put my penis inside of you,
First.
I've taken something.
I've
from
taken
you.
something
Yeah.
from you.
Yeah.
I have
But it's like
soiled
they
you.
don't have experience, so why would it even be fun? It's like, we don't want to play basketball, LeBron James or Danny DeVito. which ones played basketball and played it a lot better.
I mean, I think it would be really funny to play basketball with
too.
Danny DeVito.
Yeah, that would be
almost a bad analogy.
But
I mean,
okay, Tom Hanks. Let's do somebody else. Let's do somebody else. But you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Tom Hanks would be fun too. But
Totally.
It'd be great if Danny DeVito did fuck you
If
up
he was
in
Forrest
basketball.
Gump, pass the ball, Jenny.
Jedi. That was my joke earlier. Do you want to hear it? What?
Oh, yeah.
What generation does Forrest Gump belong to? Gen A. Which one was which?
Mine was better. You know why?
Gosh.
Because it was organic.
Organic.
Yeah.
Organic.
No, I think we're making good points. I appreciate you being on our show too, because I think like this sort of, it's like one of those awareness things that actually does help.
And it gets more, hopefully by doing this, we've made people more comfortable with wanting to talk about sex
I
and
hope
wanting
so too.
to
and what you're not
progress in their
seeing, what you're
relationship.
not seeing is that we signed a contract in order to get you on the show.
Yeah,
that
we
would
did.
try each one of these.
Yeah,
ourselves.
so Carl, you're up first. Grab the Hitachi.
Yeah,
No,
once we
we-
turn off the cameras.
Thankfully, it's
gonna get
behind the
wild.
scenes. Our sponsors don't allow that sort of
it's only
thing to
the
happen.
premium Patreon
Right,
users,
right.
like the Patreon subscribers.
Right.
Yeah.
So here's a quick thing I'd love to ask before we kind of wrap up.
Of course.
What would you recommend to someone as a way to get over their discomfort in the area of exploring sexuality? If they, whatever their discomfort might be, what sort of advice would you have to them as far as like how to make it more comfortable or how to make it less awkward, how to approach it?
Yeah, I mean, I think having conversations about it. I think listening to podcasts about sex and sexuality, listening to like YouTube stuff about sex and sexuality, listening to this, just times where people are talking about it in a way that doesn't feel scary, that doesn't feel intimidating, that doesn't feel shameful, doesn't feel judgment. If you listen to enough of those conversations, you can sort of train your own brain to see it that way, at least a little bit, and then maybe start having some of those conversations in your own life.
Yeah.
And you don't have to dive in, right? You don't have to dive into the deep end. You can get your toes wet.
Right. I have a question too. So maybe you can either agree with this or you might have statistics on it, but I feel like, being able to talk about this with your partner could actually, one, save your relationship because you can grow closer and be more comfortable with each other. And then you start to, if you're out of love or you fall back in love when you get to that point. But I would be curious to see the statistic of like, if they had a way of measuring couples that are more open about their sex talk and being open with each other and honest and communicating effectively in that department, how many like more successful marriages and partnerships there are with that healthy conversation.
Oh, I'm so glad you said that, man. Talk to people in their late 60s to 70s.
Yeah.
Talk to them because they're real comfortable sharing. Exactly how, and if you're comfortable to listen, you will learn so much. And it's like anything else. It was harder for them to be open than it is for us to even do this right now.
Right.
You weren't allowed to put out material like this. It was considered lewd or X-rated.
Unless you were Lenny Bruce.
But even how far we are now, it's hard. It's crazy to see how we're still not comfortable with it.
Right. Well, I think that's the whole
Langston
thing.
Hughes.
Like, you're supposed to be a little uncomfortable. Like, sexuality it's like anything, man.
It's
like
growth. It's change.
There's a magic to it. Nothing's comfortable that doesn't mold you in some way.
Right.
But it's also not supposed to be terrifying. It's supposed to be something like anything. Like the first time you get a massage, it's uncomfortable. Someone's touching your body. You're not really used to that, right? But the thing is, if you kind of relax and go with it, it's an amazing experience.
Yeah.
And if people could approach sex the same way they do massage, it's okay to talk to your friends and say, dude, I had this killer massage and let me tell you about it because I would love for you to have this experience. You're not allowed to go to my same therapist. But you should find your own therapist, and then she should do this therapy on you because it was wild. And here's what I did. And that's the other thing. Stop talking about what was done to you. Stop talking about what you did. Right. Start talking about that.
Right.
Like this was awesome. Like, oh yeah, she was good at this and she was good at that. Like, what'd you do?
Mm-hmm. Well, and what did you enjoy more so than making it about
Exactly.
like, oh yeah, she did this crazy thing. Well, did you like it? Did you enjoy it? Was that feel good?
Mm-hmm. Do you have any statistics or anything based
So
off
I
what
can
saying?
tell you one thing, which is, are you familiar with the orgasm gap?
No.
Is that Carl right there?
That's what's in his
Is
teeth.
that what that is?
That's the orgasm
I thought
gap.
that was the
Ask
I thought it was
Jessica.
gap in fatherhood that we make every
Jessica
joke every
can
podcast.
confirm.
So the orgasm gap is that in heterosexual relationships, for every 3 orgasms that a a woman has 1 orgasm.
Okay, yeah.
3
So
to 1
closing that
ratio.
gap, is that what we're talking about?
So what we're talking about is a lot of people would say, oh, well, that's because it's harder for women to orgasm, or men are more straightforward, or they'd come up with these sort of physiological reasons, which are all, frankly, bullshit.
Yeah.
Because if you look at homosexual relationships, there is no orgasm gap. Right. And I would say a big part about why that is because if you are a queer person, you are already having to exist outside of the realms of what is, what is okay, what is the norm.
So
and
so
you are having those conversations. You're
right
communicating, you're having those conversations.
Right.
So I would say like all of us in straight relationships need to look to our queer friends because they are doing this much better than we are.
Just learn to communicate.
Look at the go back and stream the HBO series Looking. That is fire.
And here's something that Alec Baldwin, of all people, said in a movie one time, and I love it. It's in this great movie called Outside Providence, and he plays a single dad with 2 like teenage boys. And it's really a lot about what we're talking about. It's this scene is this tension of him trying to have this sex talk with his kid, and his kid's got a girlfriend he's had for a while. And so Alec Baldwin's sitting him down like, look, I'm not an idiot. I know eventually you guys are going to start having sex. Let me have a talk with you. And his version of the sex talk, as short and uncomfortable as it is, it was one of the best I've ever heard. He goes, son, making sex is like Chinese dinner. It ain't over till both of you get your cookies. And as great as a joke of that is, like, if more people thought in that way like, and here's the other thing, like, stop thinking about the fact that, like, when you have ejaculated, sex is over. It's over. Right? Because if she hasn't finished, you get down there and you finish the job you started. Or
that's true.
Until she says, okay, it's not just happening today. I got shit on my mind or whatever.
Or better yet, if you're in a heterosexual relationship with a woman, she should come first.
Exactly.
You better.
Yeah.
That's usually how it goes. But I feel like there are some girls out there that, like, I don't know, for personal experience, where I've finished first and I try to like keep going to pleasure them, and they're like, no, you already came, and I'm like, well,
but you didn't.
But you did. Like, I'm trying to pleasure you at this point. Like, I'm a pleaser. I want to help you out.
But I would almost say that's why you start, because I think a lot of women are really uncomfortable.
That's where you start the conversation.
So you start it with, I want you to come first. I want to do whatever it is that's going to make you to come, and then we can bring this back around to me.
That makes sense.
I think this is really, really helpful in this case, and it's actually fucking hot. This is a great tip. So if you, as a man, it's for men. Or for men. or for women in that role, in relationships where it's same-sex relationship, but for a woman who's sort of like the dominant person in the bedroom, right? If you're in the middle of it and you notice that despite your best efforts, you're not connecting for whatever reason, or they seem a little bit off.
Yeah.
Lean in and whisper, come back to me. Where are you?
Damn.
It's just a mental thing. Like,
I'm about to go sit in your lap.
Like but it's like we're not connecting. I can see your mind is on something else, because you would be surprised at how often, like, just regular life is on the mind.
Right.
Bills, it pops in. Kids. It's different stresses of daily life, and all of a sudden it's like infecting your sex life. You're in the middle of having sex and you're thinking about your fucking grocery list, like what's happening. And if the person you're with is knows you well enough to recognize that you're out of it for a second, and all they're saying is like, hey, where'd you go? Come back to me.
Yeah.
Like, that's okay. Those kind of things are okay.
Yeah.
And believe it or not, that, like, when that moment happened from in that relationship forward, it was like kind of a game-changing thing. Because anytime either one of us sort of seemed disconnected from it, it was a way of telling your partner, like, hey, we're being intimate right now. And you're like, you're not here. Yeah. Without making it so awkward that you get to stop and fight about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So where are you? Come back to me, not ET phone home. Got it.
Yeah, definitely don't do movie quotes.
Don't do movie quotes.
Yeah. Maybe not.
Unless it's a really good.
Here's Johnny.
What does Marcellus Wallace look like? What? Say one again. I dare you. I double dare you, motherfucker. Say one. Oh, yeah,
we triggered him.
No, that's a great point. That's a great point. We could totally go for days on, like, what would the best movie quote be to say in the bedroom and not break the mood. Have it be funny enough that it wouldn't break the mood,
That's funny.
So
funny enough.
Maybe we'll have to wrap that on a different episode.
Yeah. But I want to give a shout. I'm so grateful that you came here. Thank you for being
here.
So much
thank you so
Thanks
much
for having me.
And I'm gonna tell you why. Like, she's like the realest.
Yeah.
She's a real. I mean, you like the thug. You like a gangster to me.
You are.
You just so thug.
Your little
nasty,
your little 1960s green box of goodies.
It's like
it's like 1960s. You got
it's like
Carol Burnett's.
the gangster of personal sexual confidence is what it is.
Yeah.
I'll take
Gangsta.
But how does let's say how does somebody connect with you if they're looking to either follow what you do?
Where can they find you?
Or what resources would you point somebody to? What do you feel comfortable sharing?
Yeah, I would say there are a lot of great resources online. I would say go follow the Cliteracy Project. That's a multi-series thing that will tell you not just about sort of the actual anatomy of the clitoris, but about the history.
And that's cliteracyproject.com or just cliteracy.com?
If you search Cliteracy, you'll find it.
You'll find it.
You're
Gotcha.
going to find it. Yeah.
Do you have YouTube or anything that you do videos?
Wait a minute. What were you saying?
No.
Sorry.
No, you're fine. Cliteracy is a great tool. O-School, I've done some stuff with them in the past. That's where you can do the order form for your orgasm. That's a great tool.
Sandwich.
Yeah, that's a cool idea.
Yeah.
That is cool. Yeah. That's really cool.
And it's cool because if you Google her, this is why I love her. If you Google, because I was checking in with her to make sure, like, hey, because what we talked about, character, reputation is everything. So I wanted to make sure, like, I said, because we keep it real, we get 100. How you feel? You okay with everything? She said, and she said, let me know, like, because if you Google her, what you gonna see of a picture of her holding up a sign that says, "You may have stripped me of my rights, but I still get more pussy than you."
Yeah,
I'm like, I will vote for you. I will fucking vote
Front
for
page
you.
of Reddit.
I will vote
Let's
for you.
go.
That shit is the bomb.
that was my
so
favorite.
If you Google Carina, you will see that, and it's beautiful.
great.
That was my
Love
favorite.
it.
That was my favorite 2020 moment. Was that Portland protest where the woman just came and like bared her vagina to the police that were trying to stand in for a protest.
One way to do it.
That's one
And
way
check
to
it
do
out.
it.
People were so uncomfortable with it, they backed down.
Yeah.
Like she literally stopped the police from harassing this peaceful protest that was going to happen by just getting naked and making them very uncomfortable. She did it in the middle of the street. Traffic stopped and everything.
That's crazy.
And no cop.
The power of vagina.
Yeah.
Because of it's the day and age of cameras, no cop wanted to approach her because they were going to be on camera.
Right.
And she literally used her own sexuality to stop
Wow.
this potential
Power.
thing. Right. So if you don't think it's there, there's your example.
True. The power is in the pussy. They
She
say.
had big clit energy.
They said the power.
Big clit
Oh, yeah.
energy.
Yeah.
Big-
Yes.
Big
Small.
clit energy.
There's small dick energy. No, there's big clit energy.
Big clit energy. Yeah, for sure.
In the 80s, Sheila Easton, which was like a Prince protege, she made a song called My Sugar Walls.
Sheena?
Ooh.
Sheena Easton?
That shit was powerful, huh?
Sheena.
Can you give us a little sample of
My
it?
sugar walls.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
You got to put the Prince in.
And for some reason, like, even though she did it right and she used a metaphor, it was like super
She was like, come
controversial.
up on these sugar walls and see what I do to you.
Right. It was the first milkshake song.
Exactly. My sugar
My
walls.
sugar
It
walls
was in the
brings all that
80s. My sugar walls need to be painted.
I'm singing the milkshake song differently from now on.
Exactly.
Well, we appreciate you being here.
Thank
and
you so
spending
much.
time with
Thank
us.
you. Great.
And so, how do we find the podcast you were a part of? I know some of the people that are listening are going to be intrigued by what you said. So,
Sure,
how do we
yeah.
check out your past episodes?
You can go to HuffPostLoveandSex.com. And you can also follow me on Twitter with Carina Kolodny.
There we go.
Carina, last name Kolodny.
That's right. Funky cold Carina.
Check all that.
I feel
stuff
like you
out.
were waiting most of the show to do that, and I'm not mad.
She's a sex educator and a media activist. She'll get your sex life going. I guarantee you like this. Ours.
like this. Learn about all these
That was
clits and shit.
awesome.
I got skills.
Yeah.
I
I'm
got
putting this on
skills.
my website. Let's keep it going.
We got a song going.
Learn about that clit. You
Yeah.
need to learn about that clit. You
Hey.
need to learn about it, study
Clitoris.
about it, read
Clitoris.
about that clit.
Clitoris.
It ain't just on the surface. There's more that's down below. And next time you go down, my friend, you better fucking know.
Let's
I
go.
say, learn about the clitoris.
Where you clit at?
You can learn about it. Clitoris.
Where you clit at?
You can learn about the clitoris.
Where you clit at?
Clitocracy. See, we just gave them the best commercial they've ever had.
Hey
All
guys,
right,
thank you
guys.
so much. Check out Carina's stuff, please. We gave you all the info. And as always with our podcast, don't forget to like and subscribe and check us out.
Tell a friend.
Heckleproof anywhere you find social media, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram.
And anywhere fine podcasters.
Fine
Grindr.
podcast, Grindr. Oh.
Look for Carl
Again,
on Grindr.
Carl, we're not on Grindr. We always tell you this, bro.
Well, maybe we need to be.
Hopeful.
Or maybe we should be. Fuck.
Might do better if we were.
Heckleproof.com, Heckleproof anywhere. Like and subscribe. And thank you for listening as always. We'll see you on the next episode. Peace.
Hey, hold on. I'm looking for the Cliteracy Project and I can't find it.
What do you mean?
You didn't spell
Oh,
it right.
don't get it. This is a Clit show.
Don't forget to like and subscribe. And follow us wherever fine podcasts are streaming.